Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching, and it's finally here. It is Titan leg day. This is video 4 in my how to build my Chaos Reaver Titan model from forgeworld, and it's kind of backwards. So the instructions, and most people will tell you to build the legs first, then the torso, then the weapons. I did it the other way around. If you check the videos in the series so far, started on the weapons first, then it's the torso, now it's the legs for the kind of final assembly. So the model is finished, but plenty of videos still to come because I'm going to convert this up to Nurgle and do some extra pieces. But this is a massive build just in itself. So it's quite a long video, so stick with it. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. If you do, like, comment and subscribe, all that kind of YouTube jazz down below. So it starts off the same way I've started any of the builds, or any build you would ever start really with a forgeworld model, is clean up. Now, if you watch the first video in the series, I've already washed and cleaned up all the models, but it's going around and doing a second cleanup with these individual build stages. So these are kind of the shin areas, and what we're putting in now are the kind of sockets, I suppose you'd call it, where the toe pistons are going to go. So they just literally slot into these holes, and you could just use super if you wanted, but I'm putting a little bit of green stuff in there because they don't quite fill that socket. So I've done that around both of those shin areas, left them to dry, and then moving on to this piece. Now in the instructions, this tells you to do this kind of last after you've built the legs. But for me, these three pieces we're looking at here is what takes the legs and joins it to the top torso, and that top flat piece there is where the very heavy top torso sits into when it's on the model. Now I didn't want to have these three pieces sort of separate or just glued, so I chose to pin these all together. So the idea is I'm going to have an aluminium rod running right through these pieces. Now, point to note when I'm showing you this here, I don't show much of the drilling with the electric drill. This is just a battery powered electric drill, because to be honest, holding it in your hand, holding it's a little bit awkward. So I'm just showing a little bit of it, and in reality what I then did was off camera, put it in a much more stable position and drilled kind of from above where it was going to be perfectly stable and I could get the hole drilled perfectly through. But obviously, you know, for YouTube, I've got to show you a little bit. So again, the very bottom piece, I've drilled a hole, then I've used that piece then to drill the hole into the next, and in the next, and so on, so that it's the same parallel hole through all these pieces. And then a bit of super glue in there, you can see here. Super glue and green stuff is going to feature very heavily in this build because I'm using the super glue just for the contact points. But you'll find with forgeworld models, they don't always touch necessarily, so there'll be patches where they're not really touching together properly or whatever. And a bit of green stuff that I'm seeing, I'm putting into the hole here, and I'm going to put on some flat pieces later. When you force those two sides together, it will cause the green stuff to fill every single air gap, and when it sets rock solid. This is the stuff that they used to sculpt models out of, or the initial casts of models. So it really does set rock solid. And in previous builds, when I've built my Warhammer Titan on the channel, I didn't bother with pins. I just did super glue and green stuff, and that model is still going strong. A couple of years later, it's been knocked over on gaming tables and things there. So this is a really, really solid method. I'm going on to pinning this time because, look, I get a lot of flack on my Warhound video for why didn't you pin, and to be honest, on a bigger model like this, it is bigger and heavier than a Warhound, and I feel it's definitely worth it, and it doesn't really add a great deal of time, so why not? So you can see here I've got plenty of super glue, we've got plenty of green stuff in there in all those places. The aluminium rod is running through the two pieces we've got together, so push right into that base piece, putting the second piece on there, and then really forcing it together to get it into the right position and also get any air out and make that green stuff really push out into all the gaps. Getting ready for piece number 3. Again, you'll see this quite a lot. I don't necessarily show it in every picture, but before we start putting glue on, it's really scoring up and scuffing up both sides of the piece that's going to go together, because that makes it contact much better. The resin is fairly smooth and slick to start with, you just need to kind of rough that up. So again, forcing the two pieces together, and you can just about see the rod in that kind of waist point sticking out as there. So, you know, it's gone right through all the three pieces and will set solidly. Now I've done that section of the build first because it's now going to have a few hours to dry before we actually start putting weight on it. Now here I'm working on the upper leg. So what I've done there, drilled a tiny guide hole, like really tiny, 1/2 mil deep, put some paint into it, then taken the piece that's going to go into there, dropped it in, and what that'll do, that then takes that bit of paint and it puts it on the opposite piece so that you know exactly where to start drilling the hole. And I'm using a hand drill just to start the hole off on both sides, so that when you come to the electric drill, you've already got a bit of a guide as to where that hole's going to go. If you were just to do it by eye and drill in the middle of one piece, drill in the middle of the other, you would get it out of kilter by even, you know, 1/2 mil would throw this piece out, because it's quite a tightly fitting piece. But the way I've done that there, drill a little hole, bit of paint, touch the sides together, it's meant it fit perfectly together with that rod. So again, just an extra bit of stability before we move on to the next kind of stage. And this is really a bit of playing. So I wanted to know exactly what pose I wanted the legs in. So before I started pinning the components of the legs together, dug out the blue tack and really just used big blobs of blue tack to stick the model together in the stages it was now. So we've got the feet, which is the base plate, done nothing to that so far, the lower shin area, the kind of thigh area with the ball socket, and then the hip area that we've pinned together. And I just wanted to test the poses and how it would stand, because although we are going to pin and glue and everything, I kind of wanted the legs and then the torso on top to be able to be freestanding without being secured, so that it's not going to sort of start toppling over, etc. Now this is how it was stood, just with blue tack. Really happy with how it stood. I did test the torso on top just to see, and thought, right, obviously it wouldn't take the weight with blue tack, but we're quite happy with where it is. Now I followed the same process to pin the thigh and the lower leg together. Test hole, bit of paint, drill both sides, seal it together with the super glue and the green stuff. Now what I'm trying to do here is getting those two ball joints on the legs into the hip area, and I wanted to pin all of them together. So you can see there, test hole, drilled into one ball joint, and then really was going through this centre section and testing where the next hole wanted to be in the same fashion as I've done before. Bit of paint on the end of that aluminium rod, drill a hole into the other ball socket. So that kind of makes sense, because it's really hard to capture that kind of on camera, because this is a massive model to try and get real good camera footage on. But essentially what I wanted to do was have a consistent piece running between these two legs. So although the weight of the model is going to sit on that whole socket area, actually the two legs are attached to each other, and hopefully then we'll be able to spread the weight kind of really evenly. So that's now been all pinned and glued and green stuff together. It's now getting the legs attached to the feet. So exactly the same process. I've put some little test holes. You can see those two blobs of white paint in the feet there. Did make it go a bit wobbly there, but slotting it in, and the white paint transfers into the shin areas, and again, drill the holes, pin it together. Now at this point, just testing it with the torso on. There was no glue on those feet to the base, and the torso sits perfectly weighted. So even without the toes on and all those other stabilizing factors, it now stands, which I was really happy with. And this had taken about 3 hours, maybe a little bit more, 3-4 hours to get to this point where it is kind of standing on its own. You know, you can put the torso on top and it's holding the weight quite well, but there's an awful lot of work still to do. You know, yes, it's hard and complicated to get to this point, but actually the time-consuming part really is all the hundreds of little pieces you've still got to get onto the model, and that's why this is actually probably one of the more daunting pieces. So you can see here we're working on, these are the pistons that hold the toes into the kind of shin area where you've seen those sockets. So it's important when you look and when you glue the feet on, you'll see where the shin kind of socket piston is, and there's those little holes or pits, I suppose you call them, in the feet, and that's where you've got to line them up correctly when you glue the feet into the shins. I'm just working now on some of the pistons that go in the back. Now these are not load bearing, so you just got to make sure you cut them to size, and you've got kind of the piston socket and the piston itself to go in on the back. Then you can start looking at how you're going to assemble the front. Now on the armour panels, it gives you a fairly easy guide. You've got these two little kind of hanging points that you're meant to glue onto the armour, and they recommend you blue tack it onto the armour and then put glue on the end, the other side of it, and guide it onto the model so that these little hangers remain stuck to the Titan. So I've kind of done the same thing, yeah, just testing them where they're going to go, scoring them up, and then sealing these onto the legs with super glue and green stuff. So these will now be stuck onto the kind of ankle area where this armour is going to go later on, and then the idea is then it gets to thoroughly set. So this set for a few hours before I finish this whole build. I think I said before, I'm guessing it was maybe 6 to 7 hours of work in a day, and I did do it in one block because I had the week off from work. So I thought, right, we're going to build a Titan. So it was done fairly quickly, but with each stage having enough time to dry. So I put these hangers on before we start getting onto the pistons. So I cleaned up all the kind of feet pistons and those kind of bits as you saw before, then did the armour mounts, and so that gets time to really solidify. Now the feet pistons you there I've glued on to the big piece, the kind of piston back, I suppose you'd call it, so it actually makes a full cylinder. Then you get the little rod, as you saw me going there, that slides in and out of this kind of piston area, and this is where you've got to cut it to size if it's a really short piston, or you've just got to get it in there and glue from the bottom to the top if it's a longer one, and sort of stretch it out. my explanations are probably making zero sense. I'm realising at this point it's really hard to describe how this works. Fairly simple. You've got that kind of pitted area at the bottom. You put the socket on the piston and leg armour on there. The actual piston rod drops into it, and you kind of lift it out and push it onto those little sockets we put in before. Going around all these legs does take a while. It's a good few minutes for each one. So while they're setting, before we work on the toes, because the toes kind of slot into that leg armour and leg piston you've seen before, you've got a lot of these little pieces of detail, and these are not load bearing. These just make the model nice. You've got sort of 5 that go around into the top torso, then you've got 5 for each leg, and these are just little mini pistons that I suppose in reality these are what would make the leg move a little bit more on those kind of bits. You can see there 5 on each leg and 5 on the waist, so just super glue with a pair of tweezers putting those on. And then we've got some extra armour panelling, so the front armour panel bit's already gone on. This is kind of the rear armour panel, really simple kind of piece to go on, not complicated. Super glue, score it up, get it on there, and it went on really nicely just with super glue. Now, if you've watched my building the weapons video of this build, you'll know that when it comes to putting the kind of cables and things on, they just don't fit because they bend in construction or whatever it is, and when they're in transit, and you need boiling water to put them back. Now, this is not boiling water. This is water that was boiling and it's cooled down. That's why I'm putting my fingers in it. I'm not quite crazy enough to put my fingers in boiling water, but it's still very, very, very hot. You can use tweezers and things to lift them out if it is still too hot for you, but these have been in and out of that boiling water a few times just to bend them to shape. So those cables underneath, literally in and out of boiling water, bend them to shape until they fit into the 2 areas you see on the legs there. And it's very much like trial and error, so keep going. It's not load bearing, so it's not super critical. Now, I did want to get this model stuck down to a base because it gives that extra bit of stability. It is standing up on its own. It doesn't need this, but I think for extra stability, and this is literally a cutting mat that I, for your kitchen, cost about £4. Drilled some holes to the bottom. You saw the pins there. There's holes in the bottom of the Titan feet that I've now drilled. I'm putting milliput down on the base, so again, just really, really seal this model down to its base. So 2 aluminium pins like you've seen there, plenty of milliput onto there, and force it down onto this, and it will seal it on absolutely rock solid, because milliput sets rock solid. So you see there, it's now on the base. It is now firmly stuck. It's now time to get stuck into the toes and the toe pistons. You can see there, all the toe pistons come to the same length, so that toe is never going to go on. And what you're supposed to do is slice a little bit off each piston and then keep test fitting it until you're happy that that toe is going to slot into the correct position. So the leg armour and the leg pistons you've seen me do already, there's like little holes in the bottom of that leg armour. That's why I've done all the leg armour, then done something else to let everything set a little bit so that I don't displace the shin armour that you've seen there. So really just turning it in, getting it to slot into that hole, and keep cutting the pistons down until you're really happy with the size and you know it's going to slot in. Now what I've chosen to do is do the kind of mid-size pistons first, if that makes sense. So some of the rods are going to have to be really long to fit in. I didn't want to start cutting the long ones down at the end where I might make a mistake. So doing the ones that need a bit more piston length, so if I make a mistake I can then use those pistons on the shorter ones. Now I've got plenty of excess milliput from doing the base piece there, so I'm using milliput in all of the sockets, and these toe pieces are very, very loose, so there's tons of extra room in these toe sockets, so fair bit of milliput going into there. Super glue, drop the pieces in and then slide it into the piston once you've got glue and milliput onto the end of the rods. So different stuff being done at each stage. Milliput and green stuff, there's not a huge deal of difference in its kind of tensile strength, or I don't know if that's even the right word, but milliput's a bit more brittle, so I didn't want that to be on an area that's going to get knocked and bashed a lot. I wanted that really to be at the bottom where it's probably not really going to flex. The sort of centre parts of the torso and the bits that might get bent around and knocked a little bit, I used green stuff because it has a little bit more flex. Milliput's a little bit more rigid. Milliput's a little bit cheaper though, or a lot cheaper. That's why I'm using that on the areas where I'm using loads of it, like to stick the feet down to the base. This will get very expensive if you're doing this with green stuff. And really I've chosen to do this really so it will seal the feet together. This is going to seal this toe onto the base. This is going to then seal the toe together, which is then sealed into the armour panel, which is that. So you get the idea, to give it a load of rigidity around this model. One thing I've also not touched on yet is keeping your hands and things clean and being careful when you are building the model. So I'm coming back in here and just grabbing a pair of tweezers to manipulate the 2 pieces here of the piston into the foot, because there's a lot of super glue knocking round, there's a lot of this milliput, and if you just start jumping at things and pushing your hands into places, you will end up getting your hands covered in super glue and milliput, whatever. I don't tend to react to this stuff, having years and years and years of using super glue, milliput and green stuff. Some people do, so some people, you might want to be doing this with a set of rubber gloves on or anything like that, just to keep your hands kind of safe. I've never really had a reaction from this, but you know, don't take that as how you should all be doing it. So you know, you might want to use gloves at this stage. For me, bare hands, but you will see frequently I might get some glue on me, or I'll get some milliput stuck to me, and then in the next shot it's not on me, because I will go and regularly wash my hands to keep myself clean. You'll also see sometimes my painting table will go from being really dirty to being really clean, because I will clean everything up every sort of half an hour or so there's not too much mess and muck and dirt floating around. You know, a clean workspace is better because there's less chance of something going wrong with whatever. So this is just taking a sculpting tool, so the metal sculpting tool that I've wet the end of, and using that to make sure that I'm happy with where all this milliput is, because this is going to dry rock solid. So I'm just really checking that the foot is properly stuck down and there's no kind of air gaps under there where I can push some milliput into. So if there is, I'm pushing some milliput into it, maybe taking a bit more milliput from the pile I've got so far, and just making sure that this really is going to be stuck down happily and give a lot of strength to the model. You can also see there the size of this model. This is a 12-inch cutting mat I've used, and the model is there, the toes are just slightly hanging over each end. So what I've done is made sure that, you know, they're sealed in, and it looks quite nice hanging over the edge of the base there, but I've just made sure that it does fit and every contact surface is used and touching. Now after that's kind of not quite set, because again this was all consecutively done, it's getting these leg armour panels on. So we glued on the kind of hanging points already onto the shin area, and on the back of these armour panels there are sort of little rectangular sockets where those hanging points are meant to go into. Now you've got two choices. If you put them into those triangular areas, the armour panels will not line up straight unless the legs are perfectly bolt straight upright. So I thought I'm going to take the choice to not do that, and I'd rather have the armour panels level with each other on the leg. So you saw I did a lot of test fitting, a lot of putting back on and back forward, trying to work out, you know, the angle I was going to have it as. And when I decided what I was happy with, again, super glue and milliput, and I chose to put it on the hanging points, and then literally slid it in so that it didn't knock the green stuff off, and then lined up the armour panels at the front section there so that they were flat. So those triangular areas, or rectangular areas rather, when you get these panels, if you do ever buy a Titan yourself, you can make your own choice, but I chose to make the armour panels level with each other, or as level as you can make them, rather than necessarily fitting into the contact points they're meant to. Now I did use plenty of green stuff and super glue, so just getting that same sculpting tool around here and, you know, pushing it into the contact point so it really seals those armour panels on around there. So again, back to the green stuff for this section, because the armour panels are somewhere that you're going to contact on these legs quite a lot. So when you pick the leg section up of this model or move it around, you're going to push on those panels. So I wanted the little bit of flexibility that green stuff gives to the model. Now the kind of knee armour is really easy to stick on, and then the other leg is exactly the same. And we are back to the end of the video with all the legs put together. Now that was 6 hours of building condensed into about 17 minutes. I am sure I have missed lots and lots of things that I did, but I tried to talk you through just the gist of how I put these things together. So really the model is done, but I need to nurgle it up, I need to convert it, I need to paint it, so there's plenty more content coming on the channel. So if you did enjoy that, like, comment, subscribe, and hopefully I will see you on the channel again.